I am Blaze Bailey. You are experiencing probably the best show in the world, Poppitt's Corner.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Poppitt's Corner. Super excited to be doing these as always. And of course, on today's show, the wonderful Mr. Eric Dow of Helsott and a bunch of other killer bands is joining me today. Eric, how you doing, man? Thanks again for giving me a few minutes of your time to hang. How you been?
Yo. How's it going, man? Thanks
Doing
for
well.
having me.
Doing well. I'm looking forward to this particular episode. I've been wanting to get you on the show for a number of months and perhaps a number of years, but that's secret information there. But,
we're doing it, man. Let's get it done.
Absolutely. So the basis of the show, I'm literally just going to go through your entire career, tell some stories, and just hang with you for a few. So if you're ready, I'd love to get started and just learn a little bit about yourself today.
Yeah, man. Let's talk.
I like it. All right. So give me some of your first recollections of just hearing music for the first time, and what were the bands that did it for you?
Well, I started at a very young age, thanks to my dad. You probably know something about that. And early recollections is Black Sabbath, first album, song Black Sabbath. I remember it scared the shit out of my older sister, and it, just sent tingles up my spine and thought it was the coolest shit. Doors. Man, I always remember the Doors. It was like one of the first things I could think of that he would play me. My parents were super into car rides, like they just get in the car and go cruise. That was kind of a thing with the older generations. There wasn't shit to do back then, so they'd go cruise the blocks in their town or just go on a long drive. And so when I was super young, my parents were still into that. So, any given time, I'd be up the street playing or something like that. And I just hear, Eric, we're going on a drive. And it was like, shit. So got to go sit in the backseat of a car for 4 or 5 hours while we drive up the coast and listen to the same 5 stories that my dad told me a million times already. And, but the good thing was he always had his mixtapes in the car. He had a badass record player that could record onto tape, in the early 80s. And he would, he was a proprietor of mixtapes before they were kind of a thing. And, I'd remember him just, it would go from like Journey to AC/DC to George Thorogood and the Destroyers. Really loved, Leonard Skinner. And, on one tape, it hit Flight of Icarus, Iron Maiden. And it just blew my mind. The first time I heard that song, I was like, what in the fuck is that, Dad? And he had that Piece of Mind original vinyl. And when we got home from that car trip, he pulled it out and showed me. I just listened to the whole album probably like 10 times. And that was like the beginning, the first thing I could remember of just absolutely not just liking the music that I heard him play, but really being interested in a particular record.
Now, let me go a little bit before this and just ask, did you guys have like a particular destination that you would go every time, or would like go up and down the coast? Would you see like would you stop at weird stuff, or you just drive for 4 hours without a destination?
Drive without a destination. Sometimes, they'd say, oh, let's go to Redondo because, they grew up in El Segundo and Redondo Beach. And sometimes we'd get out of the car if there was parking and we'd go down to the pier and down to the arcade or boardwalk or whatever. But, for the most part, it was like just get in the car and go. And Redondo was always like the beginning destination. Oh, let's go to Redondo. I'm like, well, are we going to just Redondo, or is this going to be another 5-hour thing? But yeah, man, that's kind of where I got my love for adventures, I think, I remember, very young age, one particular time we're driving up Coast Highway after hanging out in Redondo for the day. And my sister really had to pee really bad. And my mom just stopped off at this Jack in the Box, this random Jack in the Box sitting on there. And I got out of the car to go get some tacos. And fucking Warwick Davis was in there just chilling out, And I was a huge fan of Willow and Star Wars and all that stuff. But I was just like, holy fuck, dude, And that was kind of like one of my first celebrity experiences at a very young age, and got in the car and I was like, that's fucking cool, man. And my dad's like, see, if we hadn't have driven up here, that would have never happened.
It's true. So immediately after this, you said you were kind of engulfed with Iron Maiden per se, and I'm just curious, what aspect of the band did you gravitate towards at first?
Drums.
Okay, and what about?
I mean, for me, it's kind of always been like I drums is like the first thing I hear. Guitar melodies, you know, crunchy guitars kind of hit my ear, and then vocals is the icing on the cake. You know, like, you know, a lot of times you'll hear like the intro of a badass band, you know, and the guitars and drums are just doing it, or sometimes even the bass is just killing it. And then the vocalist comes in and just sucks or just doesn't hit your ear right. Next thing you know, you don't even like the band anymore, you know? So, but I always like, you know, I pinpoint the drums. I'm like, oh, that's a good drummer. It's solid, you know, and then as long as I like the guitars, I love melodies and I love crunchy, heavy guitars. But, you know, I grew up, you know, like I said, listening to some really, really good damn singers. So, you know, if you're not growling or screaming and you're trying to sing, you know, you better have a pretty damn good voice, you know. And then to backtrack from that, it's not that like Jim Morrison had a great voice or anything. So if anyone's calling me out on that, I will digress right there, you know, because he didn't, but he was a great poet and I loved what he stood for.
Sure, I think both of those guys have personality in their voice regardless. So
oh, yeah.
I'm curious for you though. So you're gravitating towards the drums at first, and the riff comes in. Are you infatuated with the song? You know, to enough? Is that what triggered it to be like engulfed in Iron Maiden? Was the overall songs per se, not just so it kind of grew from the drums are cool, and then the song, the chorus, the big hooks, the solos.
Yep, it all builds in my head as I'm listening to the song. You know, I'm like, I have a checklist in my head, you know, and it's just like, oh, got that, and then it just clicks, and then my brain shuts off, and there's no more analyzing. It's just fucking rocking from that point on, you know. And the Iron Maiden was like the, you know, and then coming home and seeing that album cover to visually lock in this, you know, it was like, okay, I love this band.
Now, when was the moment when you kind of were discovering a little bit heavier style bands than, say, Iron Maiden? Because, at this point, were there people that you were kind of getting your records from, and that's how you were learning about these said heavier bands?
Yeah, I'd say that I started like seeking out music much younger than a lot of people that I know. And so, you know, from the 4 to 6 year old range that I'm talking about, where I was starting to really understand music, you know, and owning like Metallica tapes and Iron Maiden tapes and Ozzy tapes, especially, you know, I started going out, and luckily I'm the youngest of, I have 2 older brothers and an older sister, and they're all into music too. So, I was able to talk to them about music, get influences from them and their friends. And, you know, I really couldn't go to school at my age and talk to music with the kids. Like, nobody gave a shit. So I was always like walking down or riding my bike down to the local music store and just like talking to the store owner or talking to people who are in there, you know. And of course, I look back on it now and fuck, man, they must have got a kick out of me, dude. 7-year-old kid, you know, wearing a Suicidal Tendencies shirt, popping through the door. Just, you know, I wouldn't even let my 7-year-old walk halfway down the street right now in this day and age, man, let alone cross town, you know. So it's definitely a different time. And then I got into the tape trading phenomenon. And we would just show up at the record stores and tape trade with the people that we knew would be there at that specific time of the day or whatever. And that's pretty much how I got into the heavier stuff. Went kind of like quickly to Morbid Angel and into Cannibal Corpse, and Carcass was another heavy one.
So let me branch off at this point, because you're mentioning that you went into like record shops. So what were your specific formats that you loved to buy at first? Was it the LP? Was it the cassette?
tape, case
yeah.
cassette. I had my trusty Walkman, dude. And that was it.
So and then obviously, I'm assuming because of the price thing, or was it because did you get like an allowance to where that's what you're spending your money on? So you would do, I don't know, chores around the house or something. You get an allowance, or how are you particularly buying the records if you're 7 or 8 years old?
Yeah, well, I'd hustle. I'm still a hustler these days. You gotta be, but like, I'd say with the tape trading or whatever, my dad would have blank tapes lying around, and I'd steal those from him. Put my music on them, go down and tape trade. So that was easy. Buying tapes, I mean, the used bin was like $1.99, $2.99 for a tape. I could easily, tell my mom I want to go to the arcade or pull that out on my grandma or, like look in the couch or something like that. That kind of stuff was easy. The new releases, it was like $12.99 to $15.99 for a tape. I was a little tougher. I didn't get an allowance. My parents, made us all do chores and housework just to live. It wasn't part of like, oh yeah, you can get paid for that. So it was like I always asked for money for birthdays and holidays and Christmas and stuff like that from different family members, and I would just save up. And then anytime I'd be with somebody who had a tape or a CD and that didn't like what they were listening to, I'd always try to trade them something for it or hustle them out of it. Or, like, do you like Pogs? Do you like baseball cards? Do you like this? Do you like that? And I'd take a fucking Duran Duran tape and go turn it into a Megadeth tape.
Oh, interesting.
You know what I mean?
Interesting.
So
okay.
like that, and then my beginning teenage years when I was becoming more of a shithead, I'd actually like walk into the easy liquor stores or whatever and steal a box of cigarettes or something. And then I'd go to school and sell them for $1 each to all the kids that thought they were cool. Because I didn't smoke. I've never smoked cigarettes. Not my thing. But, like they thought they were cool. And, there was like something like, 10 packs of cigarettes with 20 cigarettes each. I mean, you do the math, dude. Once I got through that shit. And then another thing I used to do is I used to go to the video stores and put the porno in like say Transformers or something, and then pay $1 rental for a porno, and then I'd go home and I'd hook my 2 VCRs together, and I'd put like a bunch of pornos on one tape, and then I'd go to school and get all the horny kids. They were like, "Hey man, you ever seen a porno?" No. $20, man. It's got full of everything you ever need here, and I was doing that at like, second grade, third grade and shit. Like, I look back on that now and I'm like, fuck, dude. But I hustled, man. And my music collection grew because of it. And it became like, it's a drug, You just got to get more and more. And especially at that young of age, dude, I felt so behind. There's so much music to find.
Did you, and you hadn't discovered the underground scene yet? I mean, you had, yes, I guess Morbid Angel would kind of count towards that, but I'm talking.
It's hard to describe the underground back then because, Cannibal Corpse was technically underground, in the early 90s, nobody listened to them, especially in Moreno Valley where I lived. Like nobody knew who the hell a Cannibal Corpse was. Moved to Fallbrook not too long after. Maybe a handful of people that were all older knew who they were. And so to me, that was kind of underground. It wasn't until I was able to start going to live shows that I realized what underground meant. But, to me, it was edgy. It was underground, And then, of course, tape trading. I was able to hear bands that I couldn't tell you the name of them now. They were like, oh, this is my buddy's band, They recorded it on their Tascam 4-track, it sounds like fucking shit. But it's all like, I'm like, fuck yeah.
And now those tapes are like legendary because they're from those times.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. When was the transition to when you kind of wanted to play an instrument and get more into music just as a whole, rather than
man.
just listen to it?
I'd been asking my parents for a drum set since I was 5, man. It was always there. I always wanted to play drums. One year they got me a guitar for my birthday, an acoustic guitar, and my brother had already started playing guitar, and I was like, hey, guitar. I don't fucking want to play guitar. I want to play drums. And they're like, well, your brother can give you lessons. I'm like, oh, okay. Awesome. I just got my ass beat by my brother, who has no patience for anything in life. Give him more reasons to pick on me. Perfect.
Now, why were you kind of gravitating towards the drums and not, say, the guitar or the bass? Or
no idea, man. It's in my brain. I'd say it's chemical. It's you are what you are. It's what you like, and your body tells you, your brain tells you, and I just wanted to be a drummer. And when I was I think I was 14 years old, 13 or 14 years old, I got a summer job cleaning carpets, busting my ass like 10-hour days and shit like that. And I got paid peanuts, by the guy who was taking full-on advantage of me. And, I look back there now, and I was working harder and doing a better job than most kids would do these fucking days, And, but after 3 months, I finally got $700 from this asshole. I'm sitting there looking at it now. I'm like, fuck, he screwed me over. But I took that $700 and bought my first drum set with it. Your parents can't fucking tell you no if you buy it yourself, man.
Now, what was the drum set you were after at first?
Yamaha Stage Custom, and I got it.
I love it. Now, is because a certain drummer that you liked had it, or did...
No, it's because I just went to Guitar Center and tried several out.
Okay, so you're trying stuff out in the meantime of saving up to get one.
Yeah.
Very smart,
Well, I mean, for years, I just go to Guitar Center or Sam Ash or the local store or whatever and just, make some noise on the drums until they told me to fuck off. So I kind of already had an idea, Plus, of course, like you watch, those badass concerts, like, for some reason I thought I wanted a Tama because of Live Shit, Binge and Purge, Seattle with Lars Ulrich. I'm like, holy shit, yeah, dude. And then you find out that a kit like that's like fucking $6,000 or something. Like, yeah, no thanks.
So let me branch off of here real quick. So you get the drums. Do you start taking lessons at this point? Obviously, you were playing a little bit before you get the drum set. Now, what kind of transpires? Is there a first band at this point? Are you jamming with other people around your area?
No, not really. My brothers were in a band, and my eldest brother was the drummer, and my middle brother was the guitar player, who is still the guitar player for Helsott. And they were in a band together. I think it was like 3-piece or 4-piece. And my brother went to go take a shower, and Mark was still playing the guitar, and I just snuck behind his drum set and started playing. Pretty quickly just started playing beats, and then started running double bass while I was playing the beats. First time I ever, really sat down behind a full kit. And fucking Mark's just like, keep going. And so I just kept playing, and I stopped, and he's like, dude. And he's like sitting, he's there thinking, and then Richard comes out of the shower, and Mark's like, did you hear that? And he's like, yeah. Kind of like, did I just lose my job? So they went on for a little bit longer playing, and then that's the summer I got that drum set. And so I just joined their band as soon as I got the drum set.
Now,
my oldest brother decided to play bass, so he stepped down from drums and went to bass.
Now, in terms of playing style between you and Richard at this point, what were some of the subtle differences of how he would play versus you at this time, if you can even remember that kind of far back?
I think we played the same. So we had the same influences. I just, he hadn't been playing very long either. He just kind of got a drum set and was like, hey, I'm going to play the drums. But I don't think he's like cerebrally as into music as I ever was. So I just think I was more solid and could do double bass right away. I think that's just the main thing. But we both listened to the same band, so he was playing the same ways. He was playing the same songs, that I would be playing. He'd go play bass, and I just jumped on drums, playing the same songs he had already been playing in the band. So I don't think there was too much of a difference. Just I was better, quicker.
Were you taking any influences from just hearing him play in the meantime?
Yeah, more watching, just sitting behind him, watching him.
Okay, so let's go to the first band if we can with your brothers and whatnot. Now, who did you try to emulate? Was it Iron Maiden? Was it
Metallica.
Priest? Metallica. Okay, so you were more of like a punk thrash kind of band. At what time period are we talking about here?
I'd say anything from, well, actually all of it. I mean, we were playing up to that point.
Wait, but 93, 94.
What year was it?
Yes. So correct.
This would have been 99.
Okay, so it's like during the new metal thing. So
yeah, we hated new metal.
Interesting. Was this a catalyst for what you wanting to just go more old school because it was like, this doesn't represent metal to me?
No, that's just because that's what we like to play. That's what we like to listen to. So, I mean, I would try death metal just a few years later, but at this time, like, I would have done death metal if I could, but I wasn't talented enough yet. I was building up my chops or whatever. But anybody that can half-assedly play anything can pick up the pair of sticks and play For Whom the Bell Tolls, and that's what I did. And For Whom the Bell Tolls turned into Creeping Death, turned into Whiplash, turned into some Megadeth tracks. We tried some Slayer stuff. I mean, just the basics, basically. I would call those the basics. And I'd say that do that with any drummer, anybody who's aspiring to play drums, man. Those are the songs to pick up, because you could play For Whom the Bell Tolls, pretty simple, and it just builds your confidence, because you just played through a whole fucking song,
Now, let me branch off of here real quick. You're playing with your brothers. I'm assuming you're bonding more due to the music as well. And it's kind of, obviously you guys are getting frustrations out. I'm sure you had your battles and whatnot.
Oh, yeah, we broke up so many times.
but overall, you connected on this one thing called music. And I'm curious how supportive your parents were of this, and were they helping you, just even getting your gear to the shows and whatnot, or helping you? I don't know. Like,
no, they were super supportive just by letting us play in their garage, because like they'd always have either an apartment. I was still living with my parents because I was so young. So it's like, I'd say their support where it was the fact that, their garage was always open to us. Their electric bill was always open to us. They never made us pay the electric bill or help pay. And I mean, they'd let me come home from work or school or whatever and fucking beat the drums for 3 or 4 hours every night, never complained. And then, of course, whenever we got a CD out or whatever, my dad was always like, listen to my son's band, super proud. So, but, monetary, not so much, they buy my brother a guitar, for Christmas here and there or whatever. But, they never really bought anything for me on the drums for whatever reason. They just had that thing against the drums.
Well, so let's branch off of this aspect. Your first show, do you remember how you guys got it at first, and were you connecting with other bands around this point through school, or?
Yeah, well, you got to remember, my brothers were older than me. So by this point in time, when I was doing my first gigs, my oldest brother was already in his mid-20s. So he's already connected. He's driving us around. He's kind of the one managing the band. And I don't remember how. I think the guy's name was like Mr. Gig or something like that. He was out of San Bernardino. He got us a gig at this weird Mexican restaurant that had a back ballroom that was huge. I mean, it was like way bigger than we should have been playing. But it was just like this weird ass fucking gig. And, I I kind of just remember being super nervous up on stage going, oh, fuck, this is it, huh? This is how it goes. You know, there's probably 50 to 100 people watching us. And I just felt like, you know, like once you start, you can't stop. It's like, you know how it is.
Sure.
So that was a crazy experience. And, you know, for a while, I just let Richard take care of everything. I was always like the really shy kid behind the drums. You know, I'd even set my cymbals up like in front of me so people couldn't even see me play. I just fucking do my thing and load up my drums, get off stage, and there'd usually be like a line of people that wanted like an autograph or a picture just to say hey. And I just like quickly run through that line just so I wouldn't be a dick or whatever, and then just gone.
Now, was this project entitled Dow just due to obviously having all three of you in the band, or what were you called at this point?
We kicked that idea around for sure. No, I think, fuck, man, we went through so many different names. I think at this time we stuck on Cruelty. And yeah, you know, a lot of people were always just called us Dow anyway. But we were Cruelty.
So, do you guys record at this point, or is this a couple of years later? Or
got a couple of EPs, but we did it wrong, like most bands that don't know what the fuck they're doing.
Wrong in terms of what? How to record it, or setting up the microphones, or
all of it, everything.
Okay.
We went to a studio with the guy who fucking was on meth and thought he knew that he was doing and thought he was the shit. And we told him we were going for a raw sound, and he took that as don't mix the album. I don't. And my brothers were so excited to just get an album out and start shopping it around and stuff. You know, I was like, fuck it, whatever. It sounds like shit.
Now, locally speaking, what were some of the bands you were playing with? What types of genres, I should say?
All kinds. I mean, by now, this guy named Mr. Gig had opened up his own bar venue in San Bernardino, and I think it was called Lyrics, if I remember correctly. And for whatever reason, my brother hooked up with this guy and like basically decided that this is where we're playing. So for years, you know, we barely played anywhere else. We played maybe like the Wheelhouse or Shooters out in Hemet, and we played the Whiskey once or twice, but mainly we just every couple of weeks we were playing Lyrics. And playing a place that much, you basically are playing with every genre that would go in there. So whether it was death metal or horror punk or thrash or whatever, we were playing with them. And yeah, we made friends with a few bands. One was called Perpetual Madness. We jammed with them a bit. I don't think any of these bands are together anymore. One was called Rusted Icon. I thought that was kind of a cool name. There was a band called Order of the Fly, which is like a horror punk band, and I think they might still be around, but probably not nearly the same members.
Right. So, so go not to cut you off here, but so obviously you're playing around town, you're kind of establishing your name. Is there a point when you go outside of kind of the local SoCal market? Are you playing other states at this point?
No, never did anything like that. You know, and I like, you know, if I knew back then what I knew now, you know, I'd be telling Richard he's not doing it right. Let me take over. And I would have had the band signed in a year because we were that good. And we had a fan base. And, you know, it was like, yeah, it's shit. It's just one of those things, man. You don't know what you don't know, you know, and I didn't ever care to. I was just a young kid just playing drums, just going about my business, hoping we'd get signed or some big things would come our way. You know, I didn't, you know, I figure you just play enough gigs and there's that guy that sits in the back of the bar that walks up to you and he's smoking a cigarette and you can barely see half his face. And he's like, you want a record contract? You know, I just figured that shit was going to happen. I don't know. But, you know, if I knew then what I know now, I would be managing the band and we would have got signed and, you know, we might not even be having this fucking conversation right now.
Well, I'm so glad we are. And I'm so glad, obviously, you know, you've learned and I don't think anyone early on in their career knew what they, would go on to know in
Yeah,
their later
exactly.
stages. So at this point, though, what is the next step for you guys, and in terms of playing, in terms of getting signed? Are you shopping these said demos out like you wanted to?
Yeah, at least I think we were. That's what Richard was saying we were. And like I said, he was working with this guy who owned the venue, and one night he'd tell us, "Oh, a guy from Nuclear Blast is coming down," or "Oh, some guy from Century Media is coming out tonight," or. And we'd never get to meet said guy or whatever, but he'd always have this hype. He's like, "Oh, I got you this gig at the Whiskey. You got to go play it." And it's not like opening for anybody. It's just like a bullshit night on a Sunday where it's a bunch of local bands that we played last or some shit. But supposedly a showcase gig, and you're gonna, and that's all the stuff that this Mr. Gig guy was telling my brother is what I think was going on, or maybe my brother was just lying to us to make us feel like we were going somewhere. I never confronted him on it. I don't fucking care. But yeah, as far as I know, we were doing what we were supposed to be doing.
Were you doing pre-sale at this point?
A couple of shows, yeah. Like we opened up for, we were supposed to open up for Michael Schenker Group, and we were supposed to do pre-sales for that. And, you play the Whiskey, you always got to sell tickets and shit like that. So, but for the most part, I think that's why Richard liked this guy is, he'd let us come down there and play any show we want for free.
And it's interesting you say that, because a couple years even after this is when the pre-sale market became huge. I mean, you literally couldn't do a show unless you were doing pre-sale around this point. So you guys probably got a little bit lucky, being so young and not having to go through that as much as, say, some of us bands.
And it's, it was really helpful for getting me up on stage and getting those stage chops, because, like I said, we were playing every couple weeks with no stress, no whatever, just go play in front of these guys, play in front of those guys, and for a young drummer, it was great just to go through those motions, set up, get off, get out of there, tear it up in front of people, get that stage fright, worked out. And so for whatever it's worth, man, I'm super grateful for those days.
I want to go to a different aspect, and we'll get back on track with your specific career and whatnot. But I'm curious, how familiar are you with Mosh King?
Oh, Weenus. I love Weenus.
Okay, so I'm curious how much of that played a part in with your guys' specific career, and even you specifically going out and seeing these live shows. Was this kind of the hub and whatnot? Because I would love to get Mosh King documented on here, and just how valuable was that tool for you specifically?
Well, first of all, if you're watching this or whatever, I love you. I actually just had him at my last Vaca Metal Battle at Viper Room as a guest. Good friend of mine, just love the dude to death. Man, from the mid 2000s on or whatever it was, I would set my yearly calendar to Mosh King. Like, I wouldn't even have a real calendar. I would just see, what's going on next week. Oh, let me see. Oh, well, there's this show, and this show, and I'm not going to those, so I'm free Tuesday. What are you doing? What do you want to do? But I basically, I set my schedules to whatever Mosh King was doing. And he was one of the first guys that would put your local band on there and put a link to your shit on there, and would tell people that your local band is selling tickets and put a link here, go hit them up. He was super helpful. I remember when Helsott got our website up for the first time, and we started selling tickets through PayPal for the first time. And Dennis hooked us up on Mosh King with the show, just put the link to our name where all you had to do was click the name Helsott and went straight to our website where the PayPal button was. I didn't even leave my house, and I sold 40 tickets.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my God, after all those years of running around handing tickets out or mailing them and people saying I didn't get them and all that bullshit, man, just went away. And now I could just hand the door person a list of names with the tickets there saying these are all paid for. Here's your money. all you got to do is let him in. And I didn't even have to leave the house. It was like, that was game changing for me and for all the help Mosh King did for that. I was super grateful.
I'm just curious how he specifically would just get all this information. I mean, that's probably must have been like a nonstop, almost like a labor of love. It's not even a job because I don't think he was getting paid for it, but just super helpful to have that at that specific time. I honestly think we need a hub again. We need a Mosh King again, just to like. We have so many different avenues. We need one central fucking place,
Yep, I know, man. He's all he's turned into a universal health care guy. He's all into politics, and that's where his life's at right now. And he says as soon as we get universal health care and his job's done there, he will gladly go back to putting all that energy into Mosh King. So I don't think we're going to get that anytime soon. So hopefully someone else steps up to the plate. But yeah, basically, I mean, if you hang around, Facebook or, what is it?
Well, right, all the social media, various platforms and
social medias, but not that, just mailing lists from the labels and agencies and stuff like that, because that's what he did. And so, like, the day a press release would come out, it would come to your email. I mean, anybody can sign up to the shit. Just go to their nuclearblast.com and go sign up to their shit, Whenever one of their bands hits on a tour, the day the tour is announced on a press release, you'll get an email about it. So Dennis would just get all those emails and he'd look himself. He'd find what's going on and add the shit himself. And then he also had the button where if you had a show that isn't on there that you know of that he doesn't, you can send it to him and he'll put it on. And then he also had a section for just local bands to check out local bands. It was a whole different tab where all you had to do is click on there and it was just all the local bands he supported and a link to their website or Facebook page or whatever you wanted him to put on there. And if you were active playing gigs, even if he didn't really care for your music, he'd put you on there. So it was, something like that was super awesome to the scene.
And lastly, when it comes to Mosh King, I just love the fact that he hardly knew any of the bands, or especially a band like us, and just super helpful to just music and metal in general. And it's like missed nowadays,
his claim to fame was he'd just wear that Mosh King shirt to a show. That's it. And then of course anybody that saw him be like, Mosh King? I love that website. And then whoever's standing next to him would be like, yeah, he's the guy. And then it'd be like, hey, let me buy you a beer, So that was the only pat on the back he ever really got, man. Which I think he deserved more.
And that's why it's important to document, But so let's move ahead to your specific journey and whatnot. Let's get back to it. And I'm curious, the next transition into the next project and whatnot. What transpires after doing like all the shows with Cruelty and whatnot? What transpires immediately after this?
Well, we break up. I dick around for a few years trying to find bands. Can't really stick. End up playing for some like country rock cover band type shit just to get some chops going and get paid. Hated it. There was, out of a 50 song set list, there was probably 2 songs I liked. And I joined a band called Dark Realm. I think it was called Dark Realm. And we were together for 3 weeks before the 2 guitar players killed each other, basically, and we broke up. Basic thing where, the one guitar player accused the other guitar player's girlfriend of trying to get into the business and being in the way, and just called her, like, I remember it was like he called her a stupid fat obstruction. Okay. And I was just like this. As soon as he said that, dude, I was like, yeah, there's no way that guitar player is going to take that.
Sure.
And I didn't know these guys very well at all. So I'm just sitting back going, fuck, dude. Well, that was a good 3 weeks, And then, I moved on from there and didn't really do much. And got a job at Guitar Center and got a back injury in 2009. I was in the warehouse sweeping up a section that I had just sold out of. It was a big DJ section, and that DJ section had been there for like years. You know, the store had only been open for a couple of years, and this gear had been there since opening day. So we all just kind of assumed it was there. Well, it got sold, and I was down there sweeping up all the 2 or 3 years worth of shit that was underneath it. And on the other side of the 2 shelving shit that was in the warehouse were amplifiers and amplifier heads. And a Line 6 Spider 4 got sold, and the other warehouse dude gets the ladder and goes running up to grab it. And it was like the third one down the stack. And, you know, you're supposed to grab the top one, run down the stairs, grab the middle one, run down the stairs, then grab the one you want, and then grab the other 2, go up and put them back. That's what you're supposed to do. Well, you know, I'm guilty of it myself. We were lazy fuckers. So he pushes the 2 that were on top of the Line 6, thinking that the DJ shit was still there, that had been there the whole time. So, you know, that would just lift up and then he'd be able to grab the Line 6 and pull it out. The DJ shit wasn't there anymore. So the Line 6 just goes shoo over the top, spins, bam. I'm bent over picking up, like I had like the, you know, the pan, the dust pan. So I'm like literally bent over, and I got hit square in the back with this thing from 9-foot drop, maybe 10 foot. And being Guitar Center and the culture there, I thought I got stabbed. It was just a sharp pain, and I couldn't breathe. And I just flew forward, and I turned around expecting to see someone there with like a knife or something, like just going postal, because fuck Guitar Center. I'm like, what did I do, man? And I just figured he's just going to go around and stab everybody there, you know? But I see this stoner dude going, oh, dude, did that fall on you? I'm like, yeah. And like, it was such a weird thing, because like I was laughing, you know, people experience pain differently. So I was like laughing at how much pain I was in. But the true essence of the pain didn't kick in for a couple of days. So the next day I actually went to the NAMM show for Guitar Center, and I'm walking around and not feeling good at all. You know, lower back's not feeling good at all, but I'm like, okay, you know, maybe I should say something when I get back on Monday or whatever. And the next day it was gone. No bueno. I had to tell them. And so they sent me to see their doctors, and they wouldn't do shit for me. And it was just like 2 or 3 year nightmare trying to fucking deal with it. But I finally got a doctor that wanted to do the surgery on me and all that shit. And, you know, I'm sitting there in the waiting room for 8 hours every 2 weeks or whatever to see this doctor. And, you know, there's all these people with like all this fucking, you know, like metal spine shit up over their head all the way down their back. And, you know, we all get to talking because we're all sitting there for 8 hours. And it's like, hey, what are you in here for? What are you in here for? And, you know, talked to a couple of the guys who had the same exact injury I had. And they're like, don't fucking get the surgery, man. Don't do it. They said, we wish we never would have. And one guy's like, this is my 4th one, and they still haven't got it right. He's like, it's fucking ruined my life. So I opted out of the surgery. I sued Guitar Center for not helping me, and went and did my own rehab. And, you know, I went from, you know, on the 3rd or 4th day of that, I couldn't even get out of bed, man. You'd have to wheel me wherever I was going. I was like bad place for like 3-4 months. And then I slowly rehabbed myself for several years. And in the meantime, I was like, well, I can't stop music, you know. So once I was able to walk again, and, you know, like, you know, always live life in constant pain. But once I was able to deal with it and cope, I started Helsott. Because, you know, hey, man, I can't drum, but I can fucking sing.
So let me ask you this: what was the most beneficial during your rehab at this point? Were you learning exercises? Did you have people kind of teaching you?
Yeah.
My favorite
thing was a heated swimming pool or a pool area or whatever, and you get the weights in that pool, and then you're able to, like, once you're in the pool, you know, and all that fucking weight is lifted off of your body, you can bend over and grab the weights, and you're like lifting around 10, 15, 20 pounds, and you don't even feel like you're doing it. So then you get out of the pool and yeah, your body feels like you just were lifting all that fucking weight. But, you know, then you just deal with that pain as it comes, rather than dealing with the pain as you're trying to do it. Because we all know when you're working out and you're in pain while you're doing it, you're just trying to get to that next set or whatever. It's so easy to mentally just quit. Say, fuck that, it hurts. So I really liked the pool aspect.
What is even the first step that you kind of have to do? I mean, you can't even walk it out of bed, let alone go to a pool. So I'm just curious.
Ultrasounds was like the first thing. Massages, just bending over and picking up sticks. You know, it's baby step, dude. It's like, you know, you got someone standing there going, okay, Mr. Dow, can you pick this pencil up? Do you think you could pick this pencil up? It's pretty degrading, man.
Really? Because I would think like, yeah, I would think you would have to have something else where it's like, not even think that it's degrading, just be like, you know what, this is the first step to my recovery, and just kick ass doing it.
Well,
and I'm sure you had that.
I was in a darker mental place. You know, my girlfriend of 11 years and I split up over it. She fucking, you know, she started cheating on me because I was like just a vegetable. And you know, I was in a really dark place. It wasn't like, oh, this is the beginning of my recovery. It was more like, fuck this shit. I just want to be at the bottom of a bottle. And so I was, like, most of my nights, I was just at the bottom of a bottle. And it was the band that did it, and meeting my wife now. I mean, I've been together with her 12 years now or whatever. You just got to keep on living, keep on doing the little things. Feel degraded, feel embarrassed, but just keep doing it, whether you feel that way or not. You know, it's self-perseverance. And, you know, shit happens. Shit gets better. I remember I bullshitted my way onto a first gig. A band I really liked called Suidakra from Germany was playing Ramona main stage. And they had just released an album that sounded a lot like Helsott. I mean, they're doing exactly like what shit I wanted to be doing, man. I had seen them at Pagan Fest. I was a big fan. And so I hit up the promoter and just lied to him, dude. I mean, we only had just like we had a bass player and a guitar player, and barely was talking to a drummer. And we had like 2 songs together, and we had just started talking to a keyboard player that could sing. It was a girl. And, you know, maybe with, you know, we could get through 2 songs. And I hit him up. I'm like, dude, we're this badass band, thundering double bass. Our drummer at the time really didn't play double bass much. He was more of a jazzy kind of drummer. You know, like, I basically described what Helsott is now to this promoter, which we were not that at all back then, you know. And he's like, all right, yeah, I'll put you on the show. So then I'm like, all right, great, we got this show. And I go tell the guys in the band, and they're like, what the fuck did you just do? So we had no other choice but to grind it out for 3-4 weeks or whatever, write the rest of the songs and record it or rehearse a set. And, you know, 2 days before the set, we were still buttoning up the last 2 songs, hadn't even been fully written yet. And we got out there and tore it the fuck up. And I thought, you know, that's Helsott, man. That's the way we've always started. That's the way it's always going to be. Balls to the wall. Say yes first. Go do shit now. Get it done. You know, worry about all the fucking shit later. And a lot of that had to do with my injury and, you know, going through the rough shit with the ex-girlfriend. And I think that gig, we went over really well, man. We ended up going back to the promoter's fucking house and partying with the band, and they couldn't believe it was our first show. They thought we were so good. And, you know, it was just such a, like, a night and day difference between being a drummer back in the day and going and hiding, and being a front man for the first time and being the guy everybody's coming up and patting on the back. And, you know, and I think I needed that at that time. I needed someone to just be like there for me and tell you did a good job and this, that, and the other. And that gig changed my life. This band changed my life. And because of this band, I met just a few months later. You know, I wasn't looking for love, but I found it. And, you know, just been looking forward ever since.
How how do you approach being a frontman compared to a drummer? Because obviously this might have been one of your first gigs as the vocalist frontman, essentially. Now I'm curious, who were you trying to emulate at first? Obviously you became something else, later on, but I'm talking about
I just wanted to get through the gig, dude. It wasn't emulation or anything. It was like I had the microphone in my hand and it was just like shaking like left and right, and they're like, all right, you're on, and I'm like, fuck no. You're on. And so there was my cue, so I just walked out on stage and did it, and like it was a blink of an eye, dude, and it was done. I couldn't even tell you how the gig went.
Interesting. So what's the next step to this? You guys obviously go into record an EP a couple of years after this. So walk me through.
Well, before we recorded that EP, we actually recorded another EP that never saw the light of day. So that year, 2010, we record our first EP that nobody knows about. And afterwards, we shelve it, decide it's not coming out. We're not going to do it. The band's changing too much direction. And we won a battle of the bands. And the prize was a recording session and $500 or something like that. And so we took that opportunity to write the 3-song EP that you're talking about that came out in 2012. So it's not like we didn't record and we weren't doing anything for 2 years, because we did. We just didn't let it see the light of day.
Will it ever see the light of day? Would you ever,
No.
maybe in 20 years or something? Little bonus?
I have it. I listened to it like maybe 3 or 4 years ago, just for shits and giggles. It's not bad. It's not that, it's not that bad at all.
I like it. So obviously, yeah, and you got to excuse my language. I'm not familiar with pagan metal in terms of how to pronounce this said name, but essentially is it Folkvanger?
Yeah, whatever you want to say, man.
Okay. So,
Folkvanger, Folkvanger,
okay.
whatever the fuck it doesn't matter, dude. Someone will accuse us of saying it wrong no matter what you say. So
sure. Right. And so obviously this comes out, this gets recorded to where you guys are, this represents the band that you guys wanted it, to do it in a time of the band's career in 2012. So this is a very good representation of where the band was at, essentially. Yes. So it comes out, you do it independently.
Yeah.
From my understanding. And do you send it out to labels, or do you just pick up and just
no, man, we got a badass tour the very next year, and we had labels talking to us already, and we actually played a showcase gig for a label. So we were actually like, talking to labels, doing things with the EP, but we never actually sent it out and shopped it. What we did do with it is we went to the NAMM show with it a few times and sent it out to some people to try to get some endorsements and try to, fluff the band a little bit better for the next time around for labels, So we were like building it up, and then, through just networking and all that shit, I, that's actually a really cool story how I got our first tour. Took some of the money I sued Guitar Center with and went on 70,000 tons of metal. It's the first time I'd ever flown, first time I'd ever been out of the country, first big adventure I've ever really gone on. I had to go by myself. So nobody could afford to go with me or wanted to or whatever. So I get on the plane, fly to Florida, get off. I'm outside the gate in Florida. No clue where I am. I've never really done airports before. I'm just like, oh, fuck, dude. Now I'm in like this foreign country. Everyone's speaking Cuban and shit like that. Like all the signs aren't in English. I'm like, where the fuck did I do? And so I called the hotel that I'm staying at. I'm like, hey, you guys said you had free shuttles. Where are you? And they're like, oh yeah. We're there every 15 minutes. Just keep looking for a vehicle that has our name on it. I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm standing there and nothing. And so I start walking back. I was going to go back inside the airport, and all of a sudden I see this like chintzy ass little fucking shuttle, scootering by, and it had a cardboard sign on it with my hotel on it. Now the side was painted with some other hotel, like a nice hotel, but I have a little sign with my card, a little cardboard sign. And I was like, hey, and the guy stopped and he's like, just you? I'm like, yeah. He's like, get in, I got room for one more. So I climb in and I sit down and I turn around and there's the band Cataclysm behind me. And I probably got the Cataclysm.
There you
go. Yeah, man, which was totally fucking cool, man. And I really like their other band, Ex Deo. It's basically the same band with extra guitar player. So I get talking to the guys and all that stuff, and we were set to play Pagan Fest 2013 in Hollywood, and Ex Deo was on the bill. So I get to talking to them about that, and I actually had tickets on me because pre-sale in Hollywood and all that shit. And I actually was selling tickets to our show, on the boat in Florida, and some people were like coming up while I was hanging out with the guys on the boat. And for whatever reason, really just like impressed the singer Maurizio, who was the agent for those tours. And so, yeah, when we got back from the boat and we did that Pagan Fest, which they had to drop off, so they weren't on it, but Maurizio was there. He was like, hey, man, how would you guys like to actually tour Pagan Fest next year? And so, yeah, that's how I got our first gig. It was the biggest gig obviously the best thing any pagan band could land. It was like fucking the Valhalla of all gigs for us. Super fucking cool, man. I just, you got to get out there and network, man. You're not going to get anything sitting at home. And yeah, so that's how that happened. And we had our little EP. That's all I had to give them. That's all we had to sell on that tour.
Wow. Now, what is the overall response to you guys on a tour, essentially with bands who are well established? They've toured. This is like your first kind of outing as far as a touring entity.
Oh yeah,
goes. So,
and we're touring with bands like Insafirum, who I fucking like. I worship these guys and all that. So no, we just had to go out and be ourselves, man. And luckily we made friends with all the bands, and the rest is history. You say Helsott to any one of those guys, they'd be like, oh fuck. So we did our job.
So I'm curious, immediately after Pagan Fest, essentially, this is kind of the first thing that you've done touring wise.
Yeah.
When was the point when you specifically said to either yourself or the band, where it's like, you know what, we need to have a full length album. You can't just keep doing it on this one EP. Now it's time to.
If we hadn't toured Pagan Fest, we would have recorded that album. Touring took everything out of us, so. Because touring is super expensive. Those that you don't know, you think buying on or selling tickets to one little show is expensive. Wait till you fucking tour with a huge tour lineup like that. You'll know what expensive it really is.
Do you immediately go into the studio after this tour? Because I'm sure you're well oiled, man. You just did a fucking.
Oh yeah. No. While we were on that tour, we were just getting show offers left and right, man. We don't like to turn them down, so we just kept fucking taking gigs. And then just like, pretty much been our whole fucking gig. We basically lose our guitar player during Pagan Fest. I was ready to fire him in fucking New York. And we said, no, we'll stick it out with him. And we asked him, if he wanted to book these gigs. We knew that we knew he didn't want to be there, and he knew we didn't like him. But so I just said, hey man, can you play these 3 gigs that are coming up, and we'll talk about it after that. And he said, yeah man, no problem. We get back from Pagan Fest. The day after, he comes, grabs his shit, and quits. Wow. So we had to get a quick replacement. And, a week later we had to drive out to Arizona and headline of Viking Fest, So, while that, wasn't too detrimental because the dude never wrote shit, and, his guitar playing wasn't that amazing anyway. He probably would have just done some solos on the album. It just, it wasn't like anything detrimental other than we lost momentum. So then we needed to get the new guitar player, and he decided to stick around. He was actually in the band for several years. So, but again, all he really did on the Woven, our full length, was just do some harmonies, I believe, and the solos that he was to write, So we were still, in my opinion, ready to rock and roll after Pagan Fest, even with the guitar player leaving. But some of the guys in the band didn't feel the same way, and they just wanted to keep taking all the gigs that kept getting fired at us. And I just kept telling them, at some point, we're going to have to start saying no to some of these so we can record.
And especially too, your momentum is everything. So even though, that specific guitar player wasn't, a huge asset to you guys, it's still that just getting in that mindset of like, fuck, now we have to teach another guy how to play the songs. It's
exactly.
Not,
how it is, dude.
It's not fun. And so I'm curious, what is the overall reception to Woven, and how do you specifically promote this compared to the EP? Are you signed at this point? Are you just giving it to your friends, or are you, what is it?
No, we weren't signed yet. This was the one, we're going to shop, and we did. So we threw down Woven, and we shopped it for a while. Not very much interest in it. And we said, fuck it. Cause like you said, momentum, and we had another tour lined up. We're like, well, let's just fucking release this bitch. And so we did. And, we sold through our first batch like crazy fast. And everyone loved it. Still to this day, they think that it's our best album. And, it has some of our songs that we always play on it, and it did really well for us. And I fucking love that album. And we just had to treat that one way different. And we didn't get signed off it. Eventually we re-shopped it when we were done touring. We're like, well, here's, we still have Woven, but by then I think the labels were like just not interested in an album that had been out a year or so. So we just moved forward. And one of the labels that was interested in us was Century Media. And we had Marco Barbieri was the president there, and he wanted to sign us. He gave us the green light. And so did Dan Dismal, I believe, was also saying, yeah, let's sign these guys. But I think they were like going through that whole transition where they didn't know what was going to happen with Sony. And then Sony bought them. And the Germans were kind of like, look, don't sign anybody right now. So they had to pass on us. And so I just went along my business, and we went and started recording the Healer EP. That came about as an Indiegogo project we did. And one of the perks we put out was you could we'd write a song for you. And we got this guy hits us up, and he buys that perk. And so I hit him up and say, hey man, what do you want us to write the song about? And he's all like, battle or blood or Vikings and shit. I'm like, oh, shocker. I'm like, I was like, but what about you, man? Let's make it personable. Like, what do you do? Because at this point I'm not thinking putting it on a Helsott album. I just record a song for the dude, no big production or anything, just like a quick demo. Like, I come to find out he's a doctor. He runs a hospital. He's out in Michigan, and he helps people, and it's all this shit. And I was like, oh, fuck yeah, dude. And so I got the idea to write a song about a Germanic healer, and, instead of being part of the battle, he's back in the battle, healing all the people that are injured and coming in. And he's just as vital to the cause as even the people with the spears and the swords, so you always need the healer. And I wrote the song for him, and he was just like, this is fucking beyond anything. He's like, I love this so much. And I was like, yeah, I kind of like the song a lot too. So we decided to do an EP around it. And so we just wrote a couple more songs, and then did a cover song and put that EP out. And next thing I know, I get hit up by Marco Barbieri. Hey man, what are you doing? oh, we just finished writing this EP. What's up, dude? He's like, well, I just started this new label, In Theory Audio. You want on? Duh. So yeah, we didn't even shop. Just went straight to M Theory.
And I'm curious with the Healer EP, is it a overall concept with the songs presented on it, or is it just that one and it's the overall, there's just the concept musically speaking, not lyrically?
There's 2 songs that are part of the concept.
Okay.
And I tied it into the EP and the Woven. So there's 4 songs in the saga. It's called, the first one and the second one are actual point of view. So it's not necessarily a part 1 or a part 2. It's just whichever side of the palette you're on. So the first one was on the Folkvanger EP, which was called Vandals Divide. And that's, the Germanic tribe, the Vandals, the Ceilings. And the second one was Cessation off of Woven. And that's basically seen from the side of the church that went in there and kind of tore up the tribes up there and all that stuff. And, I really like those songs. A lot of people love those 2 songs. So I took my time and took this advantage to tie those 2 songs into that saga. So technically the Healer, even though it was written last, would be the first song in the saga because it basically summarizes who the Healer is. And then here's a cool tidbit, especially since we touched on it. We took a song from that EP that we did that never saw the light of day called Epic Battle, and I rewrote the lyrics to incorporate the death of the Healer. So now we have a whole complete saga of these 4 songs. And one day I'd like to play them all 4 in a row live, man. It's never happened yet. But so on the Healer EP, you've got the Healer and Epic Battle, which is the death of the Healer.
I'm curious for you though, and you said you wanted to do this live. I think it would be almost cool to do it live and record it, and at least put out like a live EP of just the overall concept. You know what I mean? Like something sick. Something cool where it's like, then it's like you can obviously market it. It comes out on a CD or vinyl. And it's like, here's the overall concept that we've always wanted to do. And it would just be so cool to have that. Do you know what I mean?
I agree 100%, dude.
I would think that would be awesome. And I'm not your marketing guy. I just think it would be really cool as a fan and whatnot to have that. And I'm sure as the artist himself, it'd be awesome to have that. But so moving forward here, it's not too long after in between the EP and the Slaves and Gods record. So I'm curious for you, why immediately go into a full length album? Is it because you got
it was in
signed?
The contract?
Okay.
It was in the contract. We had to get a full length out because nobody really gets signed off of EPs anymore. So when you do, there's usually the tagline on there within the next year, you got to bring a full length out. So, which we actually were a few months late in delivering, but that's a whole fucking story all on itself. And just the fact that we even got that fucking album out is one of the most fucking prideful, proud moments in the history of the band. So you want to hear about that?
So before we get to it, and we'll get to it and whatnot, I'm curious for you, is there, even recording this, how did you want to do this one differently from Woven in terms of recording in general and production and whatnot? Do you go to the same studio? Do you?
Nope. I already had the formula down. We're basically going to do what we did for the Healer. With the Healer, we met up with JF from Cataclysm, and this is when I find out that he's actually a mixing mastering engineer. He has his own studio. He's out of Dallas. I mean, he's a Canadian, but I guess he's moved to Dallas now. So I talked to him. We strike a deal. We do the Healer. I like the Healer. We decide to just do a verbal agreement to work together for a few albums, just to get it, to know each other and to help build each other. Because, one thing I love about JF, he's like myself. He's always trying to improve, he does something amazing and he's still going, oh, I'll do it better next time. Or I can, give me 10 more days. He's like, 10 more days. So, we have our formula down and it's tried and tested. Now I know how to do it and I'm ready. And basically we use Mikey, who's the bass player. Now he's our sound guy, but, he went to school for recording and engineering out in Arizona. And so, he does this shit professionally. Now he lives at the studio in Trench Studio in Corona. And that's where we go to record. And so that was way different than Woven. Woven, we recorded in San Diego. Gotcha.
Now, moving ahead and whatnot, what were some of the challenges you faced recording-wise, especially vocally, speaking? Can you give me something to where it's like what helps you out, I guess, the most when recording vocals, even if it's choosing the right microphone or how you approach, recording and whatnot? I'm just curious how, what
well, for me is I got to have a rested voice. I've never been like the strongest vocalist, like throughout a whole tour. Like, I'm more like a Monomarth or whatever. Or you'll hear that dude's voice straining at the end of a tour. And same way with me. Plus, my immune system's terrible. So you get me out on a tour, and usually by the second week, I'm sick as fuck. And it usually affects my voice. So when it comes time to recording, I'm really, really looking like to rest my voice a few days before I get in there. And that's kind of like important for me. I don't have any specific rituals. Yes, I do use a specific microphone. No, I will not change that microphone for all you people that are so lovely and always are suggesting to me the mics you use. I appreciate it, but I have the one I use.
I love it. Now let's get to the meat of the subject and the delay with Slaves and Gods, and why didn't it almost not come out?
So 2 weeks before we were going to the studio, we'd already booked time like months in advance. 2 weeks before the studio, we get together as a band to just go over which songs we're going to do. It's kind of a new band at this point, where we've got where my brother left a couple of years before, and now we've got the other guitar player had been with us. He's got his friend in the band who filled in on our first European tour. So we're just freshly out of that first European tour, and we're back home and we're writing. And obviously now you've got the guy who's writing the meat of the best Helsott songs, actually all of them at this point. He's not in the band anymore. So the writing process is being really frustrating to me and the drummer, because it's just not sounding like Helsott. It's not coming together. But we're still willing to push forward, and try to find the best parts of everything and just work it all out, and the closer we get to time to record, the more these guitar players are like shutting down and crying and whining and bitching and moaning and like, doing everything they can to just like not record, not want to play. And so it came to a head like 2 weeks before we recorded when we got together. And I said, we've booked this shit months ago. You knew it was time. We have shit going on after. We can't not do it now. We have a contract. It has to be delivered now. Now's the time. Put your fucking big boy pants on and let's go record a fucking album. And, the guy starts fucking crying and bitching and moaning and whining at me. And I told him, just leave. I said, leave the band, dude. I said, now's the time. I said, right now's the time. I was like, I'll fucking figure out something with the label and moving the recording, and we'll dump the shows. And I was like, it seems to me like now's the time, because if we keep pushing forward, you're just going to fucking fuck us from here on out. And, I said, no hard feelings. It's just, I think now's the time.
Sure.
And he said, no. He said he's not quitting the band, that he's put too much into it and he cares too much of band, and that he'll be there to record. Okay, so we get together one more time, and it doesn't really go very well, and I'm super not happy and skeptical. And so we show up to the studio day one, and there's me and the drummer. We're there like 6 hours putting the drums together, getting all the tones down. You know how long that takes. People think, oh, it's just go push record. It's like, no.
Set the mic on. That's
Uh-huh.
it.
Yeah, that's all you got to do, right, Tanner? So anyway, we're fucking balls deep busy. You know how it gets. And we just lose track of time. That's basically all it was. You know, if I wasn't balls deep busy, I would have been like 3 hours earlier. I'd have been, hey, where are you guys? But no, it'd been 4 or 5 fucking hours, and they're not there yet. And finally, we're starting to get tracking down, you know, because our drummer doesn't need a guitar player in there to track. He has a click in his ear, and he just goes. He's that good. So he's in there tracking drums, and I get a text from the guitar player that he's quitting, and he's not coming in.
Well, you call this one.
Yeah. So Cooper, I let him run through a couple of takes because it's one of the songs I wrote. And let him run through a couple of takes. He's doing really well. I can tell he's not there yet. You know, and I get a moment. I'm like, hey, man, come here. Let's talk. I was like, check your phone. He checks his phone.
The look says it all, right?
Uh-huh. And so he calls the other guitar player, which I didn't care. I figured, fuck him too. Like, they're friends. Guilt by association. But Cooper, he's the sweetest guy. He's just like, well, let's see if he's coming in. I'm like, he's not coming in, dude. You know, and the guy ignores him, doesn't answer his phone, doesn't text him back or anything like that. So I said, all right, man. We booked the studio for the week. And so me and Cooper just recorded the songs that were like ours, you know. Shit, me and him wrote on piano, guitar type stuff together. Just needed a better guitar player to play them type deal, you know. At least to track them, you know. We could write a song, but, you know, we can't track them on guitar or piano. We're not good enough. And then we brought back a couple of old songs. Re-recorded Honor Thy Valkyrie is one of our best songs. We never really liked the production on it. We figured we could get a good production. And threw down a couple of songs where we just dicked around on the drums. Just fucked around on the drums. And, you know, and Scotty, he's the drummer for Morbid Angel right now. He's tracking us. And he's just sitting there like, what are you guys doing?
So you had to build the
I'm like, I said, we're recording an album, dude. So I get all these drum tracks and all this shit, and I just get into fucking friend mode. So I hit people up from Heidevolk, Trollfest, Arcona, everybody we've toured with, and just fucking got the gang together, man. And we fucking got that shit done. Little by little, guitar tracks came in. We sent a whole song of just drums out to Arcona, and their singer and guitar player wrote a whole song out of it, even kind of like rearranged the drums and edited them a little for their way, and sent us back a whole song for a duet. And then all I had to do was throw my vocals on it. And so half the song is in Russian, and the other half is in English. It's fucking rad duet. It's one of my favorite fucking songs we've done. But it's not a Helsott song. It's clearly written by someone who's not in Helsott. And I think that's the beauty of that album, is not only, you know, through all the turmoil and all the shit that happened, you know, two guys were able to fucking rely on their friends and get the fucking shit done.
I love this story. Now, going off of this too, there's also I think a Tom Petty cover. So your choices for that specific one, and it's so. I was telling you a while back. I think when I first interviewed you and whatnot on a different program, but I was telling you, I was like, look, like I didn't get it at first, but then I kept kind of listening. And I was like, oh, this is kind of awesome. Okay, this is really awesome. So it took me a couple tries to get into it, and but your approach to it was so different and unique. I feel that's what made it again, so off-putting at first, but
Right.
I eventually came around to like, oh, this is actually really awesome. So
Yeah.
your choice for that specific Tom Petty cover, and I don't know, your approach to that compared to the original. How do you approach this one?
Well, I mean, I wasn't gonna go woo, woo, especially after doom death metal screams and stuff like that. I mean, not that I'm opposed to. I mean, there's weird shit like that on our albums anyway, but I just felt like it would be stupid. And the first thing I thought of was like, well, instead of woo, we could get a violin to do it, And then I just all started building from there. It's like, because there's fucking 40 Tom Petty songs I'd love to cover. I'm a fucking huge fan. That one in particular, not only is it a rocker and translates very well to heavy guitar, but it's a Tom Petty song. It's not a Heartbreaker song. That was Tom Petty's first fucking solo album with Jeff Lynne producing and all that stuff, and it was the same thing. He called the boys and let's go make an album. You know what I mean? He ended up having like two of the Heartbreaker members in there helping him and stuff like that with some guitar parts. Mike Campbell threw down that solo for fucking Running Down a Dream Like a Boss, dude. Love that solo. And so like the significance of that song, it meant something to the process of what we went through with Slaves and Gods. But I think I would have picked the song anyway, even without that. It's a rocking song. I didn't want to pick a Heartbreaker song if I didn't have to. Like I said, it just all started with, wouldn't it sound cool with a violin doing that instead?
I love it. So there's a unique correlation. I love hearing about this stuff, So obviously the album comes out and whatnot. Are you generally happy with how it turned out compared to the circumstances that you guys were currently under? Okay.
One of the proudest hours of my life, man, is getting that shit done. And we were only like 3 months late delivering it too. There's bands on our label that fucking put their second album out in 2 or 3 years, and
right.
Fucking Marco isn't like up their ass, I didn't want to let Marco down. I didn't know how close he would stick to contracts. I didn't really know Marco that well. So it was super important for me to not let him down. And I wanted to deliver that album on fucking time. So when I was late, I was upset that I was late. But then he was like, dude, I can't believe you pulled that shit together. And then I look back, I'm like, not too many people else would have been in that situation and still fucking just did it like we did it. That we would have packed up the drums and left and paid the 1 day in the studio and, pissed off the studio owner because we told him we'd be there all week and, and just move on about our business and, break up or whatever you normally do. But that wasn't in the cards for me, man.
It's interesting that you have this awesome tendency of what success is to you. It's like you there's a job there, you fucking do it no matter what. A lot of musicians ride coattails, as I'll say, with the 1 or 2 members with bands and whatnot. It's like all the other members do that. They use excuses. I call them anchors to not get the fucking job done. And there's a reason why certain people are successful at what they do. And I think that's your biggest attribute to your success is just you have a job, you fucking do it. Bottom line.
Man. I appreciate you noticing that, I guess. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's like super important for us to know that stuff. And our listeners should know how to. This is what success is, in my opinion. Is you got it. You know what you do. You know what to do, and you fucking go do it. No excuses. Just go out and do it. Give it the best shot you can. And Eric is, proof of that. I mean, the proof's in the pudding.
I appreciate it, man. I mean, you don't have to be the richest person. Success is in your head.
Well, success is whatever you define it as.
Exactly.
I would say.
And some people have this huge idea of what success is, and sometimes just fucking paying the rent at the end of the month is a great deal to me. And if you're out there living like that, paycheck to paycheck like I do, and you got that rent in and that feeling that you had when you do it, it's not just you know, a weight lifted off your shoulder. It's not just, okay, now what? I can do it again next month. That's success. That feeling you are feeling is success. You did it. And, you know, a lot of people need to, like, you know, I think just, you know, tone their shit down and have success in little increments.
Absolutely, little victories as we call them here. But
yeah, just one
I'm,
little victory, the greatest that can be.
I'm curious for you, your love for drums, especially, and where I'm going with this is, yeah, you have Helsott and you sing and whatnot, but you always in the back of your mind wanted to still play drums, and you got that opportunity with a mutual buddy, Mr. Sean Reamer, right?
Zemer.
There you go. All fucked up right now.
That's
Anyway,
good. I'll call him Reamer from now on. He'll love it.
there you go. But so, what your choice in wanting to play drums, and especially, did you just need somebody to fill in, and you just happen to want to do it just for your love of drums and whatnot?
Yeah, that one was just I don't know. I love Zemer. You know, it's the first time I met him. You know, I loved his band. I always just thought he had a shitty drummer, and you know, and maybe not like, I want to say shitty. I don't want to shit on his old drummer. I'm just saying he maybe wasn't right for fucking traditional heavy metal band with some thrash influence and some Maiden influence. You know, he wasn't right for the job, and he didn't give a fuck, and you could totally tell he didn't give a fuck. And so when they needed a new drummer, I was one of the first guys out there trying to find a new drummer for him. I was really advocate, you know, and I picked several guys, and you know, and they ended up with a drummer that I picked for them. And we went and played a gig. We played a gig with them, and I'm just sitting in the back of the room watching this new guy play, and all I could think of is all the shit I would do different. And so when he quit the band, I just looked at Zemer and I said, "Fuck it, I'll do it, dude." And that wasn't like, I don't know. I wasn't like I knew I could do it. It was just, I was so irritated. I said, "Fuck it, I'll do it." Before I even thought about the consequences of what it would do to my back, or if I could physically do it, or if I'm just blowing smoke up his ass, you know, I said, "I'll fucking do it." I said, you know, and then we went and did a band practice together, and I told him, "You just got to take it slow with me," you know, and we played through a few songs, and he was just like, "I see what you mean. You're the best drummer for this band." I'm like, "Yeah, I know exactly what your band needs." Like, you know, I wouldn't overplay. I wouldn't try to put blast beats in where they don't belong. It's like, it's traditional heavy metal, man. You fucking play it like it's traditional heavy metal. You know, there's plenty of places to do the Iron Maiden gallop. There's like Overkill spots or Slayer spots. There's just pocket spots. It's fun shit to drum. It's basics. Back to 101 drumming. And with someone who's recovering from a back injury and doesn't need to do too crazy a shit, you know, something to help me rehab.
Oh, interesting. So, and obviously, you're what you're mentioning is you do what's best for the song, not the ego.
Exactly.
I love that. So, going off of this, you do a couple shows with Battlefront and simultaneously doing Helsott. Now, when does again? I'm going to butcher the name, so you got to have to bear with me. But Maleficum. When does this specific album? It's called Enemy. When does that specific thing come into play here? Because it says that you recorded on this thing.
Okay. Yeah. It was a Malfistum. So dude's he's in Germany. He's from a bunch of different power metal bands. And it's not like I was ever going to be in his band or we'd play any shows together. He just wanted some guest vocals and he dug my vocals. So it's not like I'm actually in the band, but you know, I was super happy to do that for him.
Interesting. Now, do you approach it the same way you would with a Helsott record, or does he give you some guidance? Or
no, he just sang the song himself. It's kind of like what I do when I send a song out to our guest vocalists. I just sing it the way I would sing it, death metal, you know, with the vocal patterns and the intensity I would give it, and then tell them to do their thing over it, you know, or change it if they need to or whatever, you know, but I would just give them an idea where to sing and how I'm thinking in my head the shit goes. So he did the same to me, and he's a guitar player, and he's like, he doesn't like his vocals. And I'm sitting there listening to him like, his vocals are rad. I told him, I was like, you should just sing the song. And he's like, no. He's like, I'm not that good. I'm like, okay. I thought his vocals were rad. So yeah, I just sang over his vocals.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah,
So,
I didn't want to do anything too crazy. You know, you like you say, you feed the song. If he sends me direction, which he did, then I just want to do that.
I love it. That's a very admirable contribution or I guess outlook that you have specifically. So not a lot of people have that. You'd be surprised. Uh, Now let's go to the most recent album in your career, Wolf and the Witch, which
Yes.
just got released earlier this year. Now I'm curious in how you approached this musically speaking compared to Slaves and Gods.
Oh, it's very different. Night and day. I mean, like I said, Slaves and Gods, you can't even really, technically call that a full Helsott album, can you? It's a collaboration album in every sense of the words. So I just don't even say you can compare them. A lot of the times, especially with the Slaves and Gods, and a little bit with Woven, we would get reviews where people would say we're too eclectic. We don't know what we want to do. We have too much different shit going on, which will never stop. It's never going to stop. That's that's who we are. That's what we want to do. That's, if you don't like it, you don't like it. But with this album, I think it's the most focused writing we've ever done. Like we've had a concept, we hit the concept, we had goals, we hit the goals. And I think you hear that in the songwriting and you hear that throughout the album, that it's very consistent.
Interesting. Now, in terms of the album cover itself, what is your overall direction in terms of just getting the artwork made?
Well, the artwork needed to reflect the storyline. It's a concept album, and I wanted it to represent more like a theater play. Like if you're, in the 1800s and you were going to be walking up next to a theater, you'd see a poster up on the wall, and be like the promotion company presents the title, Will and the Witch, here, come see this play. And, it would have the art of the characters in the play and the actors, and that kind of art would need to draw you in to come pay your 10 cents and see the show. So first and foremost, I wanted the art to do that.
And why? Give me your reasonings for that specific artist that you guys end up choosing for it.
It's the same artist we've had.
Okay.
We met Felipe. He came up to me all drunk at Pagan Fest that I was mentioning in 2013. And we were done with our set, and I was just out back having a beer, and he came up to me all sloppy drunk. He can speak English, even though he's Colombian. He can speak English, but when he's drunk, it was like some sort of Spanglish. And I'm just like, okay. He's like, I need to do your art, and I'm like, oh, because you get that all the time. I'm sure people want to do art for you, and he's like, no, I need to do your art, man. And I'm just sloppy drunk. I'm like, he's like, you'll see, I'll do your art. And I was like, all right, man. And so then a month later or so, we opened up for Teresa's at the same venue. And it was Teresa's and Firewind. Fucking show was amazing. He sold out. Crowd loved us. I mean, it was one of the best shows we'd ever had. I was like high for months off of that show. It was so good. And here comes Felipe, drunk and sloppy. This time, though, he had a card on him. It was one of those fold out like booklet brochure little cards. And he's like, no, man, I'm going to do your art. And he hands it to me, and the first things on there is like Blind Guardians, one of my favorite bands of all time. Turn it over Rhapsody, turn it over Iced Earth, turn it over Iron Savior. And I look at him, I said, I can't afford you. And he's like, no. He's like, you can afford me. Trust me. Just you point. He's like, email right there. Email that. So I gave it a week or two. I email him. He gets back to me right away. He's like, I told you were going to email me. And he was sober, and we were, got a great conversation. And it turns out he's from Colombia. He lives in Colombia, and the American dollar goes a long way there. And, you know, he gets a lot of money from the Euros for working for these big bands. So he doesn't mind when he sees a band he likes and some gringos that he likes, that he's, you know, he's fine with fucking giving us a deal, man. And from that day forward, he's been our artist.
I love it. I love it, man. So tell me real quick your initial choice just for the video for this said album, and if for people who haven't seen it, I'll put a link below. But I'm curious your concept overall for the music video and whatnot, how this is going to represent the album.
Yeah, well, I mean, when I was doing this, I knew we needed a good music video. We've never really had a good music video. We've had good lyric videos and visualizers and shit, but you know, good music video is super expensive, and we've just never been a band that has a lot of money, you know, and we didn't want to be the, you know, those guys that just set up in a warehouse and play. We don't want to be you know, we'd already done the let's drive out to the mountains and in the trees in the forest and play out there. That we'd already done that and really didn't do much for us. So I told the band, I said, you guys better be ready to fucking shell out some cash for this fucking video. And of course, came time to do it. Nobody was. So we had to do an Indiegogo again and reach out to our fans. And yeah, I just had the concept in my head, because you get like a concept album and it's hard to do a music video for it. And it's hard to do a music video for a lot of our songs because I write stories. Pretty much every one of our songs is a story all in itself. It's not just different lines and poetry and words that the lead singer is writing down that he knows what he was talking about at the time. You know, I'm telling like a story from A to B here. And luckily, the first song on the album, which also has a really catchy guitar hook and is a rad song, and it's basically a summary of the story, or a summary of Billy the Kid. It's not actually part of the story. It's like a prelude, you know. So I was like, well, that one's got to be it, man. That way we don't have to tell much of a story on there. And so I came up with the concept, called a few of my friends at Direct, and they've moved up in the world since, you know, I knew them 10 years ago, and they're all offering $9,000 or $7,000 just to direct a video. That doesn't even include a camera crew or the site or anything like that, just to direct. And I was like, fuck that. I was like, I could fucking do it. There it goes again. I'll fucking do it. So yeah, we looked into it, and we found a ranch out in Landers, California called White Horse Ranch. And they're like a video studio for Westerns. It's a little 2-street Western town, all authentic 1800s. They have a wardrobe department there. They have special effects. They have guns. They've got horses if you want them. I mean, it's just, you know, so, you know, you basically rent them for a day for $2,000 for 25 people on set. And then the charges just go up from there, because with 25 people on set, now you need insurance for at least $1 million, or they won't let you shoot. Then you need a porta potty or two. Then you need catering. And then you need this. And then each gun you rent is like $40 a gun, $20 for the holster. Each bullet you shoot's $3. Each wardrobe's $175 per wardrobe. So a lot of our, you know, people, I just told them, bring your own unless you want to pay for your own. You know, so we did an Indiegogo and we got like $4,000 raised. So we still were several thousand away, but we were able to make it happen. And yeah, we just went down there, and I hired one camera guy who had his girlfriend there as an assistant. Killer fucking dude, Vinny Marvosa, bass player for the band Fractures. Super rad dude. And, you know, he's like, fuck, I'm not going to charge you stupid amount of money. Let's go do this. And so he was super reasonable, and we just went out there, and the lady there that owned the place let us camp there. It was cool. So we all just went, not all of us, but most of us went there, pitched tents the night before, got some beers and some pizza and talked some shit, and went to bed early and got up at 4 a.m. before the sun came up and put our outfits on, and we're ready to go as soon as the sun came up. And so we shot for 12 hours basically. And we were able to get we were able to get 2 videos done. But what's really cool about that is we just had a few hours left in the day, and then there's a drinking song on the album where it takes place in a saloon. There's not much storyline that goes to it. So we just threw everybody in the saloon at the ranch and just got a bunch of whiskey and beer and cracked it open and just went through the song and had a party in there a couple of times. And so we were able actually to get 2 music videos out of that place.
Wow,
But
that's impressive, man. Now, lastly, I want to thank you for coming on, hanging with me. I truly appreciate a moment of your time here, and hopefully we could do this again and again and again and help you promote as much as possible.
You got my life story there now, bud.
Absolutely, man. It's what we do here, buddy. It's called documentation. It's
Next
really
time
important.
we'll do the vodka metal battle.
I love it, dude.
That's what we did last time. So we'll
That's
just
right.
alternate.
That's right. Now I'm generally curious, where can people get Will and the Witch, and what is always the best place to support a band? Is it always going through that said label to show that the label that the band actually can sell, or is it through the band? I mean, what typically is the best place to support a band or whatever?
If the band doesn't care about the label, then go through the band because they're getting the support. But if the band cares about their label like I do, I always say go through the label. So in this case, it's mtheoryaudio.com/store. And that works for us, because we've been with the label now for several years. And part of our story we skipped is we actually we had a option in our original contract to put out Woven again through the label. And so in 2020, for our 10-year anniversary, we not only put out Woven again as a reissue, but I updated the artwork and we remixed and remastered it through JF. So you can also now you can get Woven on vinyl and CD and download, and it sounds better than it's ever sounded before.
I love it, man. Well, Eric, appreciate you guys' time. Always a pleasure to talk to you, man. And thanks for coming on the show, man, and hanging. I truly appreciate it.
Let's do it again sometime.
Absolutely, man. Well, for another episode of Poppitt's Corner, guys, we're out of here.
Cheers.
Cheers.